So this session is all about staff collaboration, and let's think about where we've got this idea from, Transform for Tomorrow. So earlier on this year, a lot of schools were introduced to remote learning, and quite a few schools now have gone back across Australia, gone back to school. And one of the things we want to do is stop the amazing things that happened with technology. We want to stop them just being put aside and going back to the old normal, and take some of the lessons we've learned and do more with technology in our everyday lives. This is particularly focusing on how staff can use Microsoft technologies. I've put a link to the blog post there, aka.ms/tft for -staff, and you'll be able to find links and some stories from teachers across Australia about how they've used Microsoft technologies to transform staff collaboration. There's some really great examples of innovative ways that people have taken tools that they've used before and have used them in new ways, but also people who've taken tools and found other tools or add-ins that have actually got everything working the way that they work. And I've heard some really great stories about how things are going to change for the better in many of our schools and colleges. So I just want to bring attention to this document. Many of you will have read this, or at least started to read it. It's quite a detailed document that's definitely worth checking out. It's called Education Reimagined: The Future of Learning. And this is really a white paper all about how schools can move forward after COVID-19. So if you download this and read it, you'll find lots of really useful resources. There are tools, models, conversation frameworks and guidance that you can use with your school leadership and your teachers to actually think about what's gone well, how can we do things differently, and where do we go next. So I highly recommend this. It was written by New Pedagogies for Deep Learning in partnership with Microsoft. Lots of really great models and conversation starters. So definitely download that. Now, Microsoft Teams. You may have heard a lot about Microsoft Teams over the last few months. I have certainly spent a lot of my working time in Microsoft Teams. So we're really going to focus on Microsoft Teams in this session, and we're going to look at some of the things that can be added into Microsoft Teams as well. So I've said on the screen there that it's an online space. It's generally the hub which brings all of your apps together, and you can work to get things done in Teams, as the name suggests. So we're going to have a quick look at what Teams is, and then some ways that schools have been using this, in particular with staff communication and collaboration. So it's really, a lot of schools will have started using Teams as a way to have meetings, so video calls or one-to-one chats. But then as you start using Teams, you realise that rather than just being a way to communicate, you can also collaborate. So all of the Microsoft apps that you know and love work seamlessly with Teams. So you can share your staff notebook. You can make a form for getting staff signing up for professional learning. You can share PowerPoints in presentations. So lots of really great ways that you can use Teams. It is a business tool, so it's great for the business of school as well. So for your operations staff and your administration staff. But then there's also some really great educational tools for the classroom, and countless. I say countless because I haven't counted them, certainly more than 9, lots and lots and lots of apps that you can add in and use within the Teams environment. So really it's a powerful tool, and there's not really any limit to the way that you use it, and every school, every establishment's going to find the way that suits them. So this is really a view of Teams, and this is just a class team. So we can post messages, We can share files, we can set assignments, we can store our grades with a class. So there's 4 types of teams. We're going to focus today on just the ones that you use with staff. So we won't actually focus on classes today. So we're not talking about teams use with students. If you look back at some of the previous sessions that we've done this week, you'll find loads of really great ideas for teaching and learning, assessment, social and emotional learning, and all the great stuff that is the business of schools. But today we're going to focus on professional learning communities. So here's a quote from a teacher. We create lessons and resources together in our Science Teachers PLC team. It's our collective brain. And certainly when teachers were planning and working and beginning to teach remotely, Teams was a great way for that collaboration. People were able to bounce ideas off each other in chats. They were able to have Teams meetings via video calls and use all of the things that they were using before in new ways. So we'll explore some of that during this session as well. But as well as professional learning communities, which might be a department in a high school or a year group in a primary school, you can also have whole staff teams. And this is something that I've certainly seen a lot with the schools I've worked with in Western Australia. You're able to have staff meetings for the whole school. The principal could give a briefing, and you don't all need to collect yourselves together in one room. Different people can dial into the meeting wherever they are. So you can be setting up something in the sports hall, or you could be on a separate campus, and we can have the whole staff community together for a briefing or a discussion, a staff meeting. But going beyond those meetings, we can continue to collaborate and share in files and discussions throughout the day. And that's one of the really great things about this. It's not just a meeting tool. It's not just a file storage. It's really the best of all worlds, and you're not limited to the way that you can use this. So first of all, let's have a look at a professional learning community. Here's an example of a science teacher's professional learning community. When you create a PLC, you automatically get a notebook, a OneNote notebook. So if you've used OneNote in the past, all of the things that you love about OneNote can be done directly in Teams. So you can have multiple people collaborating, planning. You can add audio, you can embed your lesson plans from Word, you can add ClickView videos, YouTube videos, Microsoft Stream, all of that wonderful embedded content and collaborative environment is still available to you. My favourite tool really is the threaded and persistent chat. So what this means is if I add a lesson plan, we can have a conversation about that lesson plan, and every time I open up that lesson plan, I can see the conversation about it at the side of that document. So it's not like a few years ago when I used email heavily. If someone sent me a lesson plan or a document to review, that would be stored maybe in my email, and I might be having a conversation about it in another email or somewhere else. This way it keeps all of your documents and the relevant conversations in one place. I'll show you an example of that later on. Really easy to embed your other apps and files. So if you want some feedback from staff to sign up for professional learning events or to get their orders in for the end of term meal, you can do a quick form within your department or indeed across the whole school. And then there's a whole lot of other apps that you might want to add in. There's Office 365 apps like Planner and Power BI that you might be using already or interested in exploring, but you can also include third-party or external apps that you already use. So a really flexible way to start using it. And then using it for staff across the whole school. So it doesn't really matter what device you're on. So you can be on a PC, Mac, iPad, a mobile phone. You can even invite rooms to meetings. So I see some schools they might have their conference room set up as in Outlook. You can invite the conference room and everyone in there can automatically join the meeting as well. So just like I'm sharing with you now, I'm sharing my desktop. You can see what I'm presenting. We can also have the video on, and at the moment you can have up to 9 people talking and available on showing on the screen. That's increasing later this year, so you could be able to see a whole staff. There's also lots of really great accessibility features. So you can see live captions. You're able to turn on live captions to see what I'm saying, but also in other languages as well. You can record meetings and have the transcripts of those automatically available. So by default, if you record a Microsoft Teams meeting, that's saved to Microsoft Stream, and you can actually automatically generate a transcript, which is then searchable. So if I searched for the word blended model, it would show me anytime someone had said blended model within a meeting. So a really great way to keep all of your staff engaged. So whether they're live or whether they're accessing the recording of the meeting later on. So you can use the team structure strategy that suits your school and staff. I've worked with lots of different schools and universities, and everyone uses it in a slightly different way. So I've just put examples there. You might want to take a screenshot and just see what that's suggested, but you might want to set up a different team for the leadership. You might want to have a different team for different departments. You might want a learning support team, but however you decide to do it, you can make that work for you. I think about how your school is currently managed, and if it works well, set up a structure that suits that. Quite a lot of schools just have one team. They have a team called, for the name of the, so it might be Perth College staff, and all the staff are in there. And then you might have channels or private channels for different departments or organisational groups within the team. So there's no one answer, but all of the things that you do, all of the kind of groups of people that work together can work in teams. So just talk about a couple of teacher stories that I picked up over the last few weeks, and you'll be able to read more about these on the blog that we shared at the start of this session. So what I think is really interesting is there was a lot of talk amongst teachers and schools and the community about students learning from home. And whenever you heard about schools on the news, for example, it was all about how are we teaching the students. But one of the things that a lot of schools obviously had to think about is how do we manage our staff? How do we keep staff in the know? How do we let those staff communicate and collaborate with each other? So as well as being able to move to remote teaching and learning, there was also the move to remote working. So Teams obviously lends itself to that environment. It's flexible. You can collaborate in channels. You can have private chats with one other teacher. You can talk to a whole department. You can even work across schools. So I know, for example, I was talking to a teacher in a Catholic school in New South Wales, and he said they quickly decided they were going to share across the diocese. So they set up teams, and without having to every school doing the same thing, they were sharing policies and collaborating on planning and how they were going to deliver the remote learning, and that was done across schools. So that's a really useful way of working as well within teams. It depends how things are set up in your environment. Different departments and different Catholic systems and so on have different policies and things set up. But here's an example from a public school in New South Wales. So you can see here, they've just got one big team with the name of the school, public school, and then they've got sections for lots of different kind of interest groups or topics. So you can see here we've got infants, stage 2, whole school, school counsellor, Aboriginal ed, and so on. And some of these are private. So the look there that you can see, let's see if I can draw with my pen. Oh, there we go. So the look you can see on some of these are private. And you can set these up so that only certain people can see them. And that also helps because you don't see the ones that you haven't been added to. So a classroom teacher might log in and they wouldn't see canteen, they wouldn't see admin, they wouldn't see principal, they wouldn't see school counsellor. So you get the view that you need. So it keeps things streamlined in that response. And the nice thing about this is, rather than just opening up your email and you might have something there from the school counsellor, you might have something there from the principal, you might have something there from your department, everything's in one big thread. Here, you know that if you're looking at a particular topic or organisational need, you're looking at stage 3, you know that all the conversations are going to be happening in that place, and all of the files that are relevant to you are going to be happening in that place. So many schools quickly made a channel called remote learning or COVID-19, that sort of thing. And in this school, they just used this to put all of their files in. So they worked collaboratively to update policies and share ideas and bring in all of the great content that organisations around the country were sharing. Really a really great idea to have that always available. And as I said earlier, you can access this wherever you are. So just by having the Teams app on your phone, you can go in and access those documents. You don't need to be at a computer or at your desktop. It truly is a portable platform. So I'm just going to share with you a couple of really useful tools to get started yourself, and then I'll show you a few more things that you can add in a live Teams environment. So there's a really great QuickStart guide that you can download. I've put the web address at the bottom there. And that's actually a PDF that you can print off. So it just kind of shows you what all of the buttons are. Even though it's pretty intuitive, there's a lot of power in Teams, and it can be useful for staff, particularly if they're not used to using Teams or technology in general, just to find out what all the different buttons do. So it's quite a few pages that goes through the different aspects. This is a really great resource that came out last week, actually, these new interactive guides. And I'm going to show you this live in a moment because I think it's just a really great tool, particularly for those that are new to Teams. So these are interactive guides. So you've got a live environment of Teams, and it just talks you through how to click and access the different areas. It's a really great introduction to Teams. So I'll show you that, the Teams interactive guides. And then the Microsoft Educator community. This is a really great resource, whether you're looking at Teams, whether you're looking at OneNote, whether you're looking at remote learning, or just getting your head around some of the technology and how it can work in different areas of the school. There's generally going to be a course or a resource that you can access there, and I'll show you that live as well. So those are really great resources, so you can go off and explore a little bit further. So I'm just going to open up Teams here, and I'm just going to talk about some of the things that I've got set up in this environment. So I just did some training in the last couple of weeks with a few schools. So I've got some examples that I've talked through with schools or seen them using. So I've actually just gone on to the Pineview School staff page, or team. So this is a whole school team, and you'll see we've got different channels. So we've got an English department channel. I'm currently in the learning support channel, and within the learning support channel, this is actually Planner. So this is a really useful tool, particularly when you've got multiple people doing tasks. So one school I was working with, as students were working from home, they wanted a really quick way of looking at students who perhaps needed some extra support and assigning that to different teachers. So, for example, if I want to add Hayley Smith, so she's a student at my school, I can then come in and say she is on the watch list, and I can say here, Dad called about her, and I can assign that to, it might be the head of learning support, or it could be a deputy principal, or whoever it is. But the really nice thing about this is I can say that's social and emotional, and that's then been assigned. So those two teachers will see that student's been assigned to them, and they can go and chat with their other teachers or keep an eye on that student. And they might then decide they're going to move them rather from the watch list to the focus strategy. They might move them on to testing and screening and intensive support. So that's just a really simple example of using Planner. So Planner is actually available to all staff that are using Teams. It's one of the Office 365 apps. So if I go back to, let's go back to, say, for example, the English department here. We're just having a chat about different resources. We've had Teams meetings here, but I can also add tabs. So you can see here, these are some of the default apps. It will vary from school to school what you can add. So you might want to speak to your IT team or your Department of Education, but I can add things like Microsoft Forms, OneNote, Stream, and then there's these third-party ones or external ones. I don't know what all of these are, or many of them, but there's a whole bunch of different apps that you can add in. But generally, it will be a Microsoft app like Planner. And for example, we've just been doing Romeo and Juliet with Year 10 students, so I can actually embed a quiz there, and then other teachers can come and edit this quiz with me and before we make it available to staff. So we can do our planning in one place. But the really neat thing that I mentioned earlier is the fact that we can have a conversation around this as well. So I can write a question here and say something like, I think there are, if I can spell, there are too many multi-choice questions. So I can write a comment there. And the neat thing about that is I've actually clicked on this tab and I've looked at this quiz. But if I go back to my standard post page, there's the quiz and there's my comment. So that's what I meant about the persistent threading. So any documents that I've shared are available just by clicking on them, but also any comments that we've had about that as well. So if I scroll up here, here's a meeting we had on the 26th of March. Those are the replies. If I open up that document, it will open up and there's my conversation at the side. Obviously wasn't a very productive meeting, but you get the idea. That all of those files just stay in one place and you can have those conversations with them as well. So that's a really powerful way to keep up to date. If you compare that to email, think of the English department. You're sharing ideas, you're having conversations, you can search, you can tag people if you think it's important for them. So I can just say at Deborah, you must have something to say. So I've actually tagged Deborah. Everyone in the chat, so everyone in the English department will see that, but Deborah will actually get a ping on her phone or her computer to show that she's been mentioned. So it's a really powerful way of keeping everyone engaged in the same and on the same page. So let me just go back to the general tab here. So this is the whole school staff, and as you imagine, or you might think, this could get quite busy, particularly in a large school. So using those tags can be really useful. You can set tags up for departments or for leadership and things like that. And you can also tag individual people and groups of people. So we've got a general conversations here, like when we use Teams files versus the teacher's shared drive. You can do things like here, for example, I've got the acknowledgement of country, and we've had a discussion about how we might change that. And that, I love having that conversation and that document side by side, but you can always hide the conversation and concentrate on the document as well. So really powerful tool. You can also basically embed any other document into tabs. So if you already use the staff OneNote and indeed the class notebook. So here, for example, I'm in the staff notebook. In fact, just to give a bit more space, I can expand so I can actually see the whole notebook. And I'm in the collaboration space, and I'm under policies and procedures, and there's our laptop usage policy. So if I want to update this, because I'm a member of staff, I can just come in and update this. So you can actually choose who has those editing rights, and you can keep all of your notes in OneNote inside your staff notebook. So truly a powerful place where you can basically put all of your content. You can also embed things like PowerPoints or PDF documents. So there's the QuickStart guide I was talking about earlier. I just embedded it in there, so all staff have got quick access to that wherever they are. And a really neat thing is being able to use it for things like getting staff information. So whether it's signing up for a professional learning event or giving feedback. So here we're looking at an IT school development day. So we've been asked to rank what we'd like to cover. And then I can submit that as a teacher, and that goes to the convener of the professional learning session. So lots of really great things. All of the Office 365 apps can be added in there, as well as a whole bunch of external content. So I'll just show you a couple of other things in Teams. One school, a local school, are actually using this. They created a channel called Announcements. So general is kind of those general conversations, but anything important that comes from the leadership team is actually announced in the announcements channel. And when you make an announcement, you can choose to not let people reply. So it kind of depends on those types of announcements. But I can start a new conversation, but I can also change that to announcement, where you get a nice big header, and you can also change that background. So you can see we've got different backgrounds there, and you can also choose whether only moderators can reply. So that's for things like you might have a weekly briefing, or you might have an announcement about a new member of staff or a school event. You can set up those announcements. The other thing is you can hide the ones that you're not interested in. So if I'm no longer teaching English, I can hide the English department, and I can see the hidden channels. I can still get into them, but I'm not interested in the conversations that are happening in the music department or the science department. But I've just joined the history department, so I want that to show up in my list. So you've got all of those flexible ways of, oh, it couldn't show the history department. Maybe it's gone. So you've got all of those ways of communicating, and you can sort that out the way that you want. That's the whole school staff. If I go to all teams, you'll see I've got some class teams, different things here. I've also got one called science teachers. So as well as having a whole school staff, we've also got the Pineview School science teachers. So this is where we can actually share our lesson plans, have our weekly meetings, have our discussions, and that's private to us. So as a science faculty, we can have our conversations. We can, if I click up here, we can store all of our files in here. And the thing I really like is that we can all edit that live and it's in one place. So we're not editing something, emailing it to someone or putting it on the teacher's shared drive, and then someone else copies it to a USB stick and someone else uploads it to OneDrive. Everything is stored in the team and we can collaborate in real time. I can edit this in real time, and so can other people in my department. So it's a really flexible tool, both for having those conversations, storing those files, and more importantly, working on those files at the same time. Excellent. So you can see here, I've got a general channel for the whole department. I've got an area for lesson plans, parent communications, and we've got a remote learning session as well. So really easy to go and add a new channel. And you can organize that in the way that you want. So that's kind of the formal structure. You can set up a team for a group of staff that are working together, but then you've also got the ability to set up these ad hoc chats. So if I want to just chat to one other member of staff, I might be working on a small project together and I don't need the whole science department to be privy to what I'm doing. I can just click on chat. And let's have a look. I'm having a conversation here with Patty, the principal, and we're just having a conversation just like we might do via text message on a phone, but we're doing it via a professional platform. So I could have the Teams app on my phone, and we can have a conversation. So I can type a message, I can do really cool things like share emojis. I particularly like the GIFs. And so I can share GIFs. That's probably not the nice one to share with the principal, but you get the idea there. You can also schedule meetings. So if I wanted to have a meeting with someone, I can do that directly here. And that automatically feeds through to my Outlook calendar as well, if you're using email online. But I can also just have a video call or a voice call with Patty. And I can also share files just between me and Patty. So you've got kind of a private little chat with a member of staff, but you can also have a group with multiple people. So I might be planning the newsletter with 2 or 3 people. We can have our private chat without having to create a formal team. So just to finish off on the Teams environment here, if I click on calendar, some schools in Australia are using the online version of Outlook, which means that all of your meetings and appointments will automatically feed through to this calendar. But I can easily just create a new meeting and invite people both within my school and external to my school to that meeting. Again, that will depend on the policies that your school or your department have set up. So calendar, really flexible, works both with your Outlook calendar and your Teams calendar. It flows information both ways. You've also got access to all of your recent documents by clicking Files, and you also have access to your OneDrive. So I certainly find when I'm presenting or I'm teaching a lesson, I know that all of my resources are in my OneDrive. So I don't actually need to go online and find my OneDrive. I'll just have Teams open and I can access them, and then I can go and see if I've got any messages from colleagues. So it's just really, as I said at the start, it's one hub for all of your work. So that's really all about Teams. You can explore a lot more. So do have a look at the Teams QuickStart guide that I mentioned earlier. Do have a look at the blog. So this is the one I shared at the start of today. It just really has got some great examples of what teachers right across Australia have been doing. You can hear some really great stories there, and then there's a link to further information at the bottom of that. I also mentioned the interactive guides. So these were set up in the US for remote learning, and it just kind of gives you a tour. So it just shows you that you log on to Office, you enter your password, you click on Teams. So it's actually showing you where you need to click, what you need to do, and how to get to the different areas. And it just really talks through all of the things that I've been sharing today, but at your own pace. So that's a really great resource to share with your colleagues. It's yeah, I think Troy shared that in the chat, and it's also on the blog post. So definitely have a look at that. So I'm just going to go back to PowerPoint now. We go down here. So the Microsoft Educator community, if you click on training at the top, they've just changed this in the last week. So I got a little bit confused when I had a look earlier today. If you click on training on the top there, so you just go to the Microsoft Educator community, click on training. There are a whole bunch of courses that you can access. Search for Teams, search for OneNote, search for Flipgrid, whatever it is that you want to do, and you'll find courses that are relevant to that task. So I'm just going to point out 3 more resources and then leave you to start the weekend. So transform for tomorrow today. I've put the hashtag at the bottom there. If you use Twitter, click on search for transform for tomorrow, no spaces, and you'll find a whole lot of online resources, videos, ideas from the Microsoft Australia education team. So I'm gonna be using that certainly for the rest of this year. When I see something really useful, I'm gonna share it out with the hashtag transform for tomorrow. I've talked about the Microsoft Educator community. There is the web address, so do check that out. The blog post that corresponds with today's session, that's the blog post, do check that out. And if you go to aka.ms transform for tomorrow, you'll find information about all of the events.